A Melbourne-based bikie boss gunned down.
Tarek Zahed and his brother Omar.
Tarek Zahed is in a critical condition at Westmead Hospital.
His brother Omar left dead at the scene.
So Tuesday night, about 8:30, phones all around Sydney's underworld were lighting up. I started getting calls, you started getting calls. Another shooting. This time the targets were big names.
Tarek Zahed, the Sergeant-at-Arms of the Comanchero bikie gang, Australia's most powerful criminal organisation according to some, and his brother Omar. So they were at the Body Fit gym in Auburn on busy Parramatta Road in Western Sydney. It's about 8 o'clock, 8:05 exactly. Standing in the foyer, two gunmen have pulled up outside, jumped out and unloaded, we believe, around 20 shots into the foyer of the gym, through the windows, smashing it all up, but hitting Tarek and Omar. Now, Tarek was shot 10 times, pretty much everywhere. Body, head, stomach, arms, legs, and even through the eye. That shot to his head, we believe, hit him in the eye.
On our arrival, we found two male patients, approximately 25 to 30 years of age, with multiple gunshot wounds to multiple regions of their bodies.
But miraculously, he has been taken to hospital and to this point is still alive, although we're not sure exactly what kind of condition he is in. But Omar died at the scene. He had a heart attack. He was also a Comanchero like Tarek.
And it just got out of jail last year.
Yeah.
Like a number of victims. Rep Brownie, he'd only just got out of jail. What surprised, I think, a few people, we talked about, the bounty that had been placed on Tarek's head. And I think, Tarek's been, a lot of people have said that he was a target for a year or two. I got to admit, I never thought that anyone would have the balls to knock off the Sergeant of Arms, soon to possibly be the President and close associate of Mark Buttles, to take him out. And I think it shocked a lot of people.
Well, we talk a lot about Mark Buttle because he is this massive international drug kingpin. He just, he's a massive deal internationally. He just happens to be Australian. Yeah. He's a Sydney boy, and he's a former Comanchero. But he's been living overseas for a number of years. But in New South Wales, it's really been the Tarek Zahed show, hasn't it, when it comes to the Comancheros? Yeah,
everybody knows that he and Buttles are close, and that Tarek is, and he's a big figure. Tarek was a very big figure. He was physically imposing, loved the fancy clothes and the bling.
Yes.
He loved his designer clothes. So he became quite a figure. So who would want to kill him? Well,
list as long as your arm, really.
That's right. Any figures such as the Sergeant-at-Arms of the Comanchero, who are involved in a number of conflicts, major drug dealing. Now, added to that, there's an internal battle going on because the national presidency spot seems to be vacated.
Yeah.
And Tarek was considered the prime runner for that. Absolutely. So could there be somebody there quietly ambitious that maybe wanted Tarek out of the way? Or was it, he's been linked to rumours of drug rips?
Yep.
That, again, could have made him a target. There's also the fact that the Lone Wolf have lost their leader, Eric, and that there's a bit of a vacuum there, and a number had supposedly gone over patched over to the Comanchero, and maybe that led to a disgruntled Lone Wolf thinking that they're stealing their club. So,
the day before this shooting happened, we wrote a story in the paper about, intelligence that police had gathered between Bassem Hamzy, who's a massive figure in New South Wales crime, and his brother Ghassan Amoun, who was gunned down earlier this year. Yeah, in January. And intelligence police had about, potential threats to Tarek from them. Now, they were a little while ago, but it just goes to show that this isn't a new phenomenon when it comes to Tarek. The threats aren't new.
There was talk that Omar, his brother, was involved in a brawl at the Cross on the Saturday night, which, wouldn't have led to the shooting within days, you'd imagine, because this, again, was a very seemed to be quite a well-organised hit. There was 2 stolen cars, high-end cars. The one thing a lot of people are asking is, why did Tarek just keep going to that gym? I think you'd been told that there were people had told him, change up your routine. It's basics 101 for if you've got a target on your head. don't keep doing the same thing. But he did.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, we spoke to people in the hours after he'd been shot who they were almost angry that he hadn't listened to them. They told him to change his routine. They said, don't people know which gym you go to, change it up, and he hadn't listened. But that's nothing new. So we sit here today talking about Tarek Zahed and Omar Zahed being killed, but we sat here 2 weeks ago talking about Mahmoud Brownie Ahmed, who was gunned down in Greenacre in Western Sydney, another massive gangland figure who we'd written about having a bounty on his head.
Yeah.
And same thing with him. Police had warned him, told him to go overseas. His mates had told him to change the kind of car he'd driven because everybody knew what he drove and they could spot him a mile off. Whether arrogant or ignorant, he didn't do it. And it's now cost 2 men their lives in the past fortnight and 12 people their lives in the past 2 years.
So the interesting thing now is what everyone's talking about is what will happen now. You've got 2 high-profile figures in Tarek and Omar who have been shot, 1 killed, close associates of Mark Buttles. Now, everyone would expect he will come out guns blazing to try and avenge the shooting. But if it's internal, I think you'll find the guns will be silent.
So Omar's death is the 12th that we've seen in the past 2 years, linked to gangland crime on Sydney streets. It's just rising and rising, but there's a common theme with almost every single one, isn't there?
Well, it started with Ferris Aben Nader, a former Comanchero, shot dead outside his house. He was a very close associate of Mick Howie, former boss of the Comanchero, believed to be going over to the Bandito. And so with all these shootings, the common thread is the Comanchero, right up until the shooting on Tuesday of 2 Comanchero. So up until then, they were the ones believed to be behind the shootings. The intelligence was suggesting, and now somebody's hit back.
And one of the biggest issues for police has been the fact that the Comanchero were already a massive organisation in their own right, but in recent years they've joined up with the Alameddine Crime Network, which has become a name that we've written about. I couldn't tell you how many hundreds of times.
The merging of these 2 groups is really a major problem, not just for the police, but for their rivals, like the Hamsies, wiped out almost, let's face it. The Ahmeds are once very, very powerful family and no longer anywhere near who they were. There are still some other families out there keeping low profile, as you would, but you wonder when there'll be and perhaps those families on the outer might join together because they're getting squeezed by this almost this conglomerate, this monolith of the Comanchero and the Alameddines. Quite frightening combination.